2 for 1 Jack, splat, just like that. Bringing you tons of information, that's where he's at. He goes around town covering topics you'd like to know. Well, that's what you get when you tune in to
spend money differently than the legislature provides would undermine the checks and balances at the core of our Constitution. Friday's action to invoke the National Emergencies Act is an affront to the rule of law. That law provides authority related to military construction projects that are necessary to support the use of the armed forces. The idea that it can shift billions of dollars defying Congress's explicit decision not to fund such, and here I quote our senior senator, a medieval border wall, offends our common sense and threatens to make just the sort of change to the Constitution that Washington cautioned against. In Colorado, we will be on the side of the rule of law. And because Colorado would be hurt by this illegal action, having funds that are dedicated to be spent here moved elsewhere, we will be joining an action to challenge this. As your Attorney General, I will always fight for the rule of law, defending our constitutional democracy. That's what brought my family here after surviving the Holocaust and what makes this a sweet land of liberty. Together, we will prevail in this fight. Together, we will prevail in this fight, and this challenge will only strengthen the very institutions that are now under attack. Thank you so much for your engagement in our democracy.
Thank you so much. As you mentioned, this is much bigger than just immigration. This is a blatant power grab. And so I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Ana Temu from the ACLU of Colorado.
Hi everyone, hola todos y todos. My name is Ana Temu. I'm the Immigration Campaigns Coordinator at the ACLU of Colorado. And for me, my story began when my parents immigrated to the United States. And I was raised knowing the hardships that undocumented people face in this country. And I've been organizing on immigrants' rights for years and years. And it wasn't until the day that my sister-in-law called me to say that my brother had been picked up by immigration that I really felt cold and pissed. Because the emergency, the real emergency that Trump has created is not at the southern border. It's here. It's inside of the United States. He is creating a hateful environment for immigrants to live in. He is separating families. He is tearing communities apart. That is the real emergency that is going on in this country today. We don't need a border wall that is 2,000 feet long, 2,000 miles long. We need help and resolutions here. We need to make sure that all Coloradans are welcome, regardless of their sex, their gender, their status. We need to make sure that we're creating an environment here in Colorado for all Colorado residents to feel like they are welcome, because we know that when immigrants prosper, when immigrants are welcomed into this community, we all do better as a community. I am so grateful and thankful for all of you that are here today in the snow. I know that my toes are freezing, but we ask you to stay involved, to come to the Capitol, to help us on a day-to-day. We are fighting to make sure that we are making Colorado a welcoming state for all. So thank you all for being here, folks.
All right, so it's 2 years since the beginning of this administration, and so many things have changed. Things that seemed impossible 2 years ago now seem so weirdly normal. So I'm going to have our next speaker give us a recap of the last 2 years and the moment where we're at and where we're going. So next it's my pleasure to introduce Joe Salazar.
Hey, what's up, Colorado?
Run, Joe!
Out here on the Capitol steps in the cold, or when it's really sunny, when it's rainy. The fact is that you all are showing up all the time, right? And what's really crazy is that we're having to show up all the time. Right? I mean, and that's what they want. They want some type of protest fatigue. They want us to get tired. But here we are 2 years later, and you're still battling back. Let's do a little bit of a recap. That we had an individual who was running for office who was demonizing certain groups of individuals, calling them rapists and drug dealers and telling people out in the country that they were coming after you. Let's talk about how he made fun of the disabled community and he raised questions about the LGBTQ community. Let's talk about how since that time period, how we see kids being put into cages and separated from their families. Let's talk about the rise of nationalism and the fact that we see hate crimes increasing in the United States of America at such a great clip. And let's talk about how he uses his lies to justify building a silly-ass wall. See, I could be talking about 1932. I could be talking about the rise of Hitler. And why is that? Because 45 is just a facsimile of every single dictator that's ever existed in human history. Where they go and they demonize people. They make them lesser than, because it's easier for people to swallow inhumane acts when they don't see people as being human. And that's what we have through this president. We see him engaging in an unconstitutional act of declaring a national emergency. Every scholar out there believes, even the conservative ones, believe that this is an unconstitutional act. We have Democrats and Republicans also agreeing that this is an unconstitutional act. But let me tell you something. Well, let me tell you what I see in comparing 1932 and the rise of Hitler to 2019. Is that a lot of people are talking about a lot of stuff, but I'm waiting to see some action. I'm waiting to see a rising up of our elected leaders, of our courts, and stopping this fool from destroying our democracy. I am tired of people talking about impeachment, and I want to see it actually come to fruition. I am tired, yes, and lock him up. Right? If there should be any chance about lock him up, that's the one that's going to come to fruition. I am tired of how we have our elected officials coming to rallies like this, saying rah, 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 and getting you all beefed up on it, and then going back into the building and not doing a damn thing. And that includes a governor. Because outside of decrying this president's immoral and unconstitutional act of declaring a national emergency, what else have we seen here? We've seen nothing as of yet, and that doesn't mean that something isn't coming. It just means that we haven't been told about it. And as constituents, we should be told about what our state government is going to do to protect people. Over 2 years ago, after the election, just days after the election, I was asked by one of my schools in my house district to come and talk with the kids because they were crying. They were afraid. And I said, you betcha. And I went to McElwain Elementary School just a few days after the election. A school that is like 80% free and reduced school lunch, primarily brown kids. And there was a Muslim girl there. And she came over and she hugged me. She don't know me from anybody. She knew that I had a title as a state representative, but she came over and she hugged me. And I said, ay, mijita, I said, I'll protect you because that's my job. And I had a bunch of other little kids around me, some of them undocumented, coming around me, crying because they were afraid of the things that they were seeing in the news, the things that they heard their parents saying, and their friends, and their neighbors. And I sat there with them for the longest time, and I said, I am here to protect you. That is my job as your state representative. And that's why I brought that Ralph Car Freedom Defense Act. That's why I brought it to stop the state government from cooperating with the federal government on immigration issues. That's why we brought that bill. That's why I worked with Colorado Immigrant Rights Coalition and the other, the Muslim groups and Jewish groups, to say that we were going to stop this and we were going to protect our communities. I haven't heard that yet here. And that's frightening to me, because in 1932, a lot of people said a lot of stuff and did nothing. And then we saw the rise of fascism. And as an ardent student of history, I don't want to see that happening in 2019. We have come too far. We have come too far. We have evolved too much to allow this shit to happen anymore. Now here's one more thing. I don't see my brother Phil here. Where's he at? Phil, you still around? Phil took off. Feels like every time Joe starts speaking, I feel like he's yelling at me. Let me tell you something though. We do have an attorney general who right out of the gate said that he's going to join the lawsuits to stop this administration. And that's the leadership that we need. And that's the leadership we need to support. Is we need to support that. We need to support Phil as he goes through this. Because being the first Jewish Attorney General of the state of Colorado, he's going to be faced with an awful lot of hate speech. They're going to come after him. They're going to call him a traitor. And we have to be there to back him up. Because I see Phil standing up for us, and I only see Cardboard Corey standing over here. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the quintessential moment of our time. It truly is. This is that moment when we look back on history, when other people look back on history and say, what the hell did they do in 2018 and 19? What the hell did they do after the election of 2016? And God help me, I want our generations to say, I was proud because they stood up. I was proud because they fought back. And I was proud that they stopped that man from having another 4 years in which to wreak havoc upon our country. That's the history that is being written right here, is we are stopping his bullshit now. And I hope the press puts that out there, because one thing that you're not doing, and I'm an ardent fan of the press, but one thing that you don't want to talk about is how he is similar to Hitler. Put that out there. We have seen this happen before in history. And history is unoriginal and it is vain. It is unoriginal, and that's why it repeats itself. And it's vain, and it asks us, it's begging us to change it. We have seen this happen before. Start putting it out there. Our country demands this and deserves it. Thank you so much for being here. I love you all.
Thanks again, Joe.
Vote him out! 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 Vote him out!
Right. So thank you so much, Joe. As an undocumented resident of Colorado here, I'm sick and tired of the president lying about our communities. I'm tired of the lies, and on top of that, the abuses to our communities, separating families here in Colorado and at the border. It's shame on the president. Next, it is my honor to call to the microphone my good friend and managing director of CIRC Action Fund, Juan Gallegos. Queridos amigos,
Today marks day 4 of the so-called national emergency. On day 1, I begin to wonder if I had missed the exact time when the emergency began. Nothing seemed different than the day before or the hours before. The only reason I knew there was a national emergency, as it is so called, was because it was on TV. On day 3, I began to wonder if I, as a DACA recipient, would soon snap and begin committing all the crimes outlined by our president. Let's be clear, there is no national emergency. Immigrants seeking refuge and a better life are no longer entering this country without inspection through the southern border at the same levels that they had in the past. It's all fake. So I'm here today, gathered with you all, to talk about hope and to explain our demands here. From the words of Asada Shakur and from our knowledge of what we do with the walls, like the Berlin Wall, she said, I have been handcuffed by the haters, gagged by the greedy, and if I know anything at all, is that a wall is just a wall and nothing more at all, it can be broken down. Hope is knowing that even if the wall is built, you all here will be with us as we break that wall down piece by piece. Hope is knowing that together we can imagine a better future where walls do not divide us, but where we build bridges and paths to find common interest and to get to know one another. We demand that our leaders do similarly, to begin and to right their wrongs. And this is just the start of our demands. Congress should issue a joint resolution and even sue President Trump for overreach to stop this theater. Congress must also stop funding deportation and border forces with our tax dollars. Immigrant and border communities are not for sale. We demand commitments from the Colorado delegation to stop spending money on our prosecution and our incarceration. We demand that in the 2020 budget they invest in education, infrastructure, and healthcare instead of building vain walls and vanity walls. Our senators, Gardner and Bennett, your votes tell us where you stand. Every vote that sends an additional dollar to this administration's medieval wall and ICE enforcement shows us that you agree with the administration's racist and hateful agenda. We will not stand by it. We will not forget, because what do we do when immigrant rights are under attack? What do we do when children are being separated at the border? And what do we do when a fake national emergency gets declared for a vanity project? That's right. Here in the state of Colorado, we also need to see more action from our governor. In good faith, we work tirelessly to get him elected. And we haven't seen a lot of action, and the public doesn't know if there's anything happening behind those walls. And so we need to know and we need to hear from them. We also know that this border wall is not just an immigrant rights issue. It's not just a crisis that the immigrant community and asylum-seeking community will face, but this is also a crisis that our planet will face. We know that they already are starting to take away the land of the butterfly sanctuary at the border. We know that they're taking away the land of the farmers that live in those ranch by the border. We know that they're already doing this. This is also an environmental issue that we need to work to solve. Thank you for being here today.
All right. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce Amanda Gonzalez, Executive Director of Colorado Common Cause. Please give her a clap.
All right, y'all. Let's hear it for Cold Toes. Let's hear it for ending racism. And let's hear it for love. I'm here today because I know that our government, our democracy, and our country is better than this. I know that because people power is what makes our democracy better, and you all came out in the snow and the cold to show that racism and the abuse of power is wrong. This is a gut check moment for what kind of country we want to be. Congress must put the good of the country before the good of the party to check this power grab by President Trump. We need to stand up against our president's repeated attacks on the values that we all share as Coloradans. And today we came together to defend our democracy, defend immigrants, Muslims, Black and brown communities from Trump's power grab. But tomorrow the work doesn't stop. We must continue to ensure that people have the power. We have to protect voting rights, demand transparency in government, and hold our elected officials accountable. Our voices have to resoundingly say, this is our democracy, and Trump's racism and abuse of power will not be tolerated.
Thank you. Before inviting our final speaker up, I just want to give you all a quick rundown of what's going to happen. So we're going to have final speaker close us out, and then we're going to do a couple of walks around the Capitol building and become as visible as possible to the cars around, so they know that this fake national emergency has a real response and that real people are standing behind, trying to make sure that we actually get immigrant justice and we get all those abusive agencies defunded as well. So it's my pleasure to introduce Reverend Timothy E. Tyler, pastor of Denver Shorter AME.
Good afternoon. It's cold out here, but we need to be out here. I was just reflecting that this is Black History Month, and that all of us are reflecting on a nation that allowed its foot to be placed on the neck of people. And today we're all here together, black, white, human, because once again this nation is allowing our president to put his foot on our necks. Yeah! We've gathered for a national emergency. It's an emergency. He's the emergency. He's the emergency. He's the emergency. And we can't turn our backs on the emergency. We've got to keep fighting. We've got to keep walking, talking, protesting. We've got to keep fighting against this emergency. I was reflecting on our ancestors who fought for our freedom, even though they knew that they would not see the freedom themselves. I'm afraid that our fight is looming so large now that many of us will not see the freedom. But we must fight for our children, for our grandchildren, for our great-grandchildren. Come on now, we've got to keep the fight up. We've got to call our local officials, many of them who are not here with us today, but will be asking for our votes and pretending like they are progressive. But they can't even progress themselves to be on these steps with us. Don't throw your votes away. Don't ignore the abuse. All politics, all justice is local. And if you cannot stand with us locally on these steps, don't pretend like you're in the fight for freedom in this nation. This is serious. People of faith must come together. People of no faith must come together. Black people, white people, people of color, women. We've got a lot of work to do. We have a lot of struggle to deal with. We're going to be... I'm trying not to cuss because I got my collar on today. I'm just going to be truthful with you. It's damn cold out here. This is Monday. I was preaching all day yesterday. I want to be at home with my puppy drinking coffee. But can I tell you something? It's not about me. It's not about you. This fight is bigger than me, bigger than you, and we've got to stay on the wall until Trump gets off the wall. Lock him out! I see visions of orange suits and flip-flops. We have to laugh about it to keep from crying about it. This is a national disgrace. And people actually agree with him. But we must fight. Fight the wall. Fight white supremacy. Racism. Fight sexism. Fight homophobia. Fight misogynism. We must fight. We must fight. Stay strong. Keep walking. Make our ancestors proud of us. Keep up the fight. Fight for democracy. Fight for freedom. 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 Keep up the fight.
All right, y'all are ready. All right, so now we're gonna take a couple laps around the Capitol building, try to become as visible as possible to the cars driving by.
It's 2 for 1 Jack, splat, just like that. Bringing you tons of information, that's where he's at. He goes around town covering topics you'd like to know. Well, that's what you get when you tune in to the 2 for 1 Jack Show.